Today, we are talking about the Woodpecker Method by Smith, Tikkanen, and produced by Quality Chess, which is run by Aagaard and Shaw. Okay, this one is an important review for the dojo. For one, this book is a central tactical book for the cohorts between 1800 and 2100, right? It's one of the key tactical books that they have to do. There's a lot of material in this book for them to cover. So we want to talk about how the book is used. Also, we're going to talk about how it can be used on Chessable. But beyond that, this book was very interesting because it's doing some novel things in problem presentation and creation that affect the way we do or can think about our problems within the dojo training program, right? We have our own set of training problems, and this book has some interesting ideas. Not all of them really followed through, but has some interesting ideas, and not just about the famous woodpecker that everybody has probably heard about. The book's got more going on than just the woodpecker. Okay, so split up between beginner problems, intermediate, and advanced. And for that reason, I feel the book can be valuable to even a much broader range than just 18 to 2100, right? GMs might find the two beginning and intermediate problems easy, but then, at least for me, there was quite some interesting and challenging problems in what they call the advanced section. And beyond that, maybe lower rated players might find the advanced section too hard. So what I'm trying to say is the skill level, difficulty level, between the beginning of the book and the end is pretty great, right? Other books, say Chess Tactics from Scratch, the breadth of difficulty is not that big, right? Okay, so that's just something to bear in mind. One of the novel things that the book does that I think is interesting is it's giving us positions all from previous world champions, okay? And I think this is fun because it allows us to test our mettle against them. Now, we have the advantage of knowing it's a problem, but still, it's interesting then to see how did Alekhine play this position, for example, right? How did so-and-so play it? And then you can see also a little bit of how they evaluated, thought about chess through those examples. And something that's, let's say, a technological innovation that's come along is, I'm pretty sure the way they did this was you get a database of, say, Steinitz's games, and then you can ask ChessBase to find tactical problems. And I'm certain this is the way they did it. They have games in here that are kind of not well known because the database has, offhand games, blitz games, all kinds of stuff going on in the database, and then the problems are generated from that. Now, it does create a little bit of an issue because then the problems are not human chosen necessarily. And the answers aren't necessarily human as well. You do have people, obviously, who've curated the problems, but something I've discovered as a problem creator myself is that once the engine shows you something, it's sometimes hard to see what the human take on the position might be. And at the very least, the solution needs to show what those human questions might be, right? The lines have to include like the obvious things a human does. And I think maybe a future edition could do it, but it doesn't really reflect the human element as much as it could, right? But I think that's something they could improve on. Okay, now a very controversial thing, and I've done public battle. I've done public battle with Aagaard over this. We had some podcasts. Is he has an incorrect notion of what the world champions is. His is a legalist approach, claiming that guys like Ponomarev, Khalifman, and the first Anand title, before he won it for real, that those were actually world championship titles. Now, I'm not going to go into it here, but that's plainly incorrect. And it's using this book as a forum to advance that wrong take on history. Almost to showing the guilt that they feel, though, with this, the problem sections with Khalifman and Ponomarev are notably smaller than, say, Kramnik and Kasparov, right? So it's like they know They know they've done something terrible there, but they're just committed to it. They're all in. Okay. Another thing that's very interesting, we have this problem in our test as well, is should there be red herrings? So for example, when you are doing a bunch of problems, you can become primed to seeing tactical solutions. Let's say you're playing a game. You won't necessarily say, oh, there's a tactic here. But when you're doing problems, you do have that sensation, obviously, and you're looking for the most tactical move right away. And if it looks like it works, you're going to say, oh, that's it. Well, obviously, that's a problem, and that's a bad habit. Right? So what the book tries to do, and there's far more of these in the beginner and intermediate sections than there are in the advanced sections, but it's to throw in some problems that aren't actually problems, which they actually have answers that are correct. Like you're supposed to not do the tactical move. And I have a lot of sympathy with this, but the problem as a user I have with that approach is that when I'm doing a problem and I don't find the answer, well, I'm going to sit there forever, boss. I'm going to sit there forever because I want to find it. But then if I think, oh, maybe there's this red herring thing, then that's just going to encourage me to give up, right? Whereas part of the challenge with problems is I don't want to, stop. I actually want to, go until I find it. Okay, I'm not going to say there's one right way to do it, but there's not a really convincing way in my mind. Personally, I think it's better just to take the red herrings out. Okay, the next thing to be aware of, and this is something the book is onto something interesting, but it's not successful in the execution. What the book wants to do is instead of saying, like, you have a problem right or wrong, it wants to give you points for finding certain moves down the line. And this is very interesting and important. So for example, if I reviewed a Dvoretsky book, Recognize Your Opponent's Resources. That book was great in the sense you have a problem, very difficult, and you're probably not going to find everything in there, but you want to see how much of the solution can you find. And also here we have sometimes a move where you get maybe the first one right, but we want to then see how many details you get right. And it's tricky, and I like it a lot, and we're doing something similar with the dojo training tactics, right? But with a book, it's very unsatisfying because where am I supposed to write these points down? And what do the points mean, right? Like there's no thing at the end which says, oh, I got 300 points and that means I'm a chump GM or something like that. There's nothing like that. So there's no point for me to actually be recording the points. And I do think that it's very useful and psychologically important to have some kind of gamification of the problems you're doing. Right? To me, it's a nice gamification just to see how I did against the world champions, but it would be even cooler if you could say, like, quantify your level, right? It's something we're trying to do with the dojo problems as well. Let me just show a quick example of that. I'm going to come back. Here is a position. It's white to move, and it's Aronian Karpov 2003. Okay. And a lot of these things are very satisfying. And, I was very happy to find this nice bishop e7. It's just a beautiful move. Basically, I'm threatening both to destroy the king side structure and rook d8. Now, to my mind, the only couple things that I felt like I needed to see was like, how do I answer these two moves, right? And obviously, rook e7 is falling to rook d8. How do I answer those moves? If I have an answer to those moves, then I'm happy. So one of the things they do here is they're like, okay, you needed to see this, and then you needed to see like this and this. So they go all the way here for a little check mark. And it's really weird because, in the game, Karpov plays queen c7, but, you play something like queen b7 too. And it's not like there's some... It's just weird, right? There was no need to go that far because the basic point, and I'm sure this is what Aronian thought of too, is that because his pieces are better, especially splitting the d file, if I crush the king side, I'm going to have a winning position. My force count over there is stronger. So that's just an example of how this point things works. But I do want to stress, if you, instead of just saying a problem's right or wrong, if you can assign a value of like 3 out of 5, and then continue doing that problem for problem, well, then you can tell somebody what their tactical rating is based on how others have done with the same set of problems, something we're doing at the dojo. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about Chessable. I had the chance to watch a student of mine do it on the Chessable. And Chessable is a totally different interface. And it's not just this book, but so many others. Like once you take it to Chessable, it's just a completely different animal. And so, for example, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to turn it more into like a chess.com puzzle. So you make a move, the machine makes the opposing player's move. You make another move and so on. And the issue, there's a lot of issues with this. The first is, if there's more than one response, you don't even get tested on those, right? Second, that whole thing with the points, that goes out the window. That doesn't exist anymore. Also, curiously, it gives you prompts. There's no prompts in the book, nor should there be, right? So there's weird prompts. Well, look at the knight. Maybe there's something wrong with the knight. Things like that, right? It doesn't really make sense. Now, one of the challenges for the online interface is precisely that it's very satisfying when the machine makes the opponent's move and you can go click, 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 kind of like you do with the chess.com puzzles. But for these deeper problems, we really want to see how much you can see in the position. That's the challenge, and that's something you're not getting with the Chessable, right? It also does a thing where you, if you run out of time, it gives you a specific amount of time. It then just shows you the answer. So that whole quest of finding the answer is gone. You don't get that aspect, right? It's just going to show it to you. The online interface, of course, should have a variety of advantages. One should be that they could figure out something like points, see how you did compared to other people, and then give you some kind of rating. Again, I want to stress one of the reasons that's interesting for me is like, I do these dumb workouts, and if I know that there's a kind of benchmark that I want to hit, I'm not an athlete or anything, right? But if I know there's something like that, I'm going to try a little harder, right? The gamification isn't totally dumb. Okay. So one thing I want to critique finally about this approach, which is also the chess.com approach. By the way, the chess.com approach, when it's easier puzzles, I don't have that much of a problem. But when it's a kind of involved, like these advanced problems, I do have a problem with it. And one of the issues is, that's a little bit what I call the Christopher Columbus phenomenon. So when Christopher Columbus sets out, it would be cool if Christopher kind of had a sense of what he hoped to achieve when the ship set sail, right? In the end, he's just kind of blundering about and naming things the wrong way. And what the chess.com and the Chessable kind of allow you to do is blunder out with that first move and then, blunder your way through the rest of the problem, not really getting it, right? Getting it in the way you would want to get it for a real game. Okay, I've saved the woodpecker idea for the last. This is, I think, what really made the book famous. And the idea of the woodpecker is that you should repeat the problems. But kind of like the points and the red herring, it's a concept which doesn't really get fully developed. In one way, because they don't really tell you. And I don't know how they would tell you either. They're kind of like, well, do X amount and then repeat it. And then repeat it a while after that, and see if you can get faster. And it's an interesting idea, right? But I think for most people, we'd want to know exactly. We'd want to be like, okay, boss, tell me exactly how this is going to work, how my points going to, how is it going to work, how's all the points going to work out, and all that stuff. But it doesn't. But I do think the book brought up or it gave a word to something very important with the repetition of material. Now, for my part, I've never done a set of problems and then like instantly gone back and done it. But I did it for the advanced problems in this book. And I was expecting, because my memory is terrible, that I would have a really hard time. But I had spent some really quality time with those problems. I set it up on the board as I think the right way to do it, and I really studied them. And if I, sometimes I would get maybe a detail wrong or something, looked at it, yada, yada. In any case, when I went through it the next time, because I had done it kind of recently, I'd just done it, it was surprisingly easy for me to go through all of these advanced problems, which is, I think, not what's supposed to happen. I am, though, on the concept in general, I'm mostly kind of sold. But we have to be, I think, a little intelligent about, like, what do we repeat? So, for example, the two books that I have repeated in my life several times that I think are very helpful is I've repeated all the maiden twos from the terrible, terrible chess book, right? That has helped me. I do it every couple of years, and every time I do it, it just goes boom, boom, boom. I see the patterns really fast. Boom. Very helpful. The other one is this Dirty Russian Endgame book. Don't try to get it. It's too hard to find. But for me, it's been a great book, a companion through the years. There's a lot of endgame studies, technical, like rook endgame positions that I really was able to drill down. And those I have to repeat every couple years. And one of the things that's interesting is in that book, in the back, I write down if I got it wrong. And so there's problems in there where I'm like, oh, I got this wrong in 2006, in 2012, I got it right in 2014, that kind of thing. It has been going on for decades now, right? And that is very useful. I feel like that is definitely the way I really drill down to learn rook endgames, something that you have to kind of repeat, and every once in a while you got to go back and do it, right? So standard positions, how do you solve them? So, again, I think that's a very useful idea and something that we could try to do with the dojo problems as well. So, there it is, the Woodpecker Method. Definitely, I think, actually, let me end with this thought. We have a variety of tactical books and in the program. And the general idea, consensus, let's call it, is that people need to be doing a lot of volume with tactics, And by the way, my friend Alex Yermolinsky, GM, says, no, not true. He's never done a problem in his life. So there is the opposing view. However, the consensus really is saying you need to be doing a lot of these problems. So we're going to need to be creating more of them, right? And one of the interesting things I'll just leave on is there's also, I think, a general consensus that the skill level in chess has gradually increased, right? Every decade, going all the way back, Philidor, Morphy, Steinitz, every generation, it seems, is getting stronger. And then you ask yourself, well, why are they getting stronger? Why is that a necessary thing? And I think part of it is the evolution of training methods, right? And this book, you see, has a lot of things, there's a germ of ideas that I think are actually very interesting, even if they're not fully developed in the book itself. And then those germs, the woodpecker, the points, right? Maybe even the red herring thing, are things that other people are going to develop and think about and create not only more material, right? Definitely there's going to be more and more of this kind of books, but there's going to be more thought about the design, about how they are created, and maybe the gamification of that creation. So there it is, the Woodpecker Method.